Hello, hello. It's Christina Barr. You're watching Black Tea News. Hello, hello. Welcome to Black Tea News. I'm your host, Christina Barr, and today we're going to be talking about this subject, and I guess it's a little taboo, but this phrase about leaving the Democrat plantation. A friend of mine who I follows me on Twitter raised a question like, well, they didn't raise a question. They said it was disrespectful to use this phrase because it does it not remove agency from Black Democrats. And so people are going back and forth with them. So I wanted to offer some commentary on it. It's not a phrase that I normally use, and it's something that's been around for a minute. But I think Dinesh D'Souza, I'm pretty sure, has used it quite a bit, but Candace Owens definitely has used the phrase and made it vastly popular. So I'm going to talk about what I think that means. I'll have a clip of Candace Owens speaking for herself, explaining it, and explaining whether people should or shouldn't use it, and what is the purpose behind it. So we'll be talking about that. Also, Laura Loomer got into a little bit back and forth with Dan Crenshaw over the dumbest thing, I must say, an inappropriate thing, and there was some doubling down of it. So I want to talk about that. And also, I did a video some time ago. It was last year, maybe longer than last year, but I do think maybe it was early last year. No, maybe it was even going on more than a year ago. But about Blue's Clues and some of the stuff that they've had on Blue's Clues now. And I had some backlash before. Most people agreed with the video, but I posted it on YouTube not too long ago, so people are pressing up against some of the stuff that I said. So I just wanted to go ahead and address it while I'm on here talking to you guys, and because I already wrote an article like addressing the critics, but I'm going to go ahead and just address it some more because I didn't quite say what I'm going to say today. So anyway, before we jump into it, please go blacktnews.com. Check out, you don't have to go right now, but sometime later, to blacktnews.com. Check out different articles we have on the website, different videos that we have on the website. You guys can check out different merch that we have on the website, like Pro-Choice Men Are Sus. We got the sus stands for suspect, by the way. We also have the cute little You Are Not the Special mugs. We got black tea mugs, different stuff you guys can get at the website. Also, I do write novels. Most of them are fiction. I do have one nonfiction faith book, but there's a picture of me, my 15 published books. So if you go to blackteennews.com, hit the merchandise button, there's a banner that will take you to my book website. And I thank you guys for checking out my stuff, people who have read it. And some people said they just ordered some stuff. So I hope you guys like it and enjoy it. I do love to write. Also very soon will be coming out with, of course, God is Blatantly Against Abortion. At least the pre-order will be available sometime soon, or at least the Kindle, and then the paperback will be available for pre-order relatively soon. So just keep an outlook on that, or look out for that rather. And if you go to blackteennews.com, you can, sign up for different updates so you guys can stay up to date with what's going on with that. It was very much a labor of love with that book. And by the way, my baby sister actually did that cover for me. So, well, at least the artwork with the baby hands reaching out to God, and she did such a fantastic job. So very much appreciate what she was able to turn out with that. She did a great job. So yeah, on the lookout for that. So you guys know that I like to start with something humorous before we jump into everything. So I have a meme for you guys from Grand Old Memes. It's a go-to person that I like to go to if you're not following them on Facebook. I mean, not Facebook. They might have a Facebook. I'm not sure if they have an Instagram, but they do have a Twitter, and maybe Elon's the only reason why they're still there. I don't know. I don't know if they've ever been banned before, but they have got some good memes. So they're a go-to person. So They had this garage sale here from the Bidens going on. So they got all these classified files here, and I don't know if there's a ton of other stuff in here that relates to some other Biden thing going on. It looks like they have I think those are bears and harnesses, if I'm not mistaken, or something looks creepy in the box. I'm not sure. But at least the classified documents are there. So I'm not sure if there's any other Easter eggs, as they're called. But as you guys probably know, the world lost his mind because there was a report that Mar-a-Lago was raided to get classified documents back that Trump had, and there was all this like media hysteria from Donald Trump and these leaks, and they're alleging that there could be, I don't know, nuclear codes and all kind of other stuff, and alleging like Trump was a spy and going to sell out stuff to our enemies, all kinds of crazy narratives going on. But Trump was just bad and he needed to be arrested and prosecuted, just all these crazy narratives going out there. And Biden commented on it, like he was interviewed, like, what did you think when you saw these documents on the floor? And he's like, it's just disgraceful, it's so dangerous, or negligent, or whatever he said. But those look like stage photos, by the way. And if it was so dangerous, why are you taking photos of folders on the floor? Like, why are we all like privy to see these classified documents spread upon the floor? So there's just a lot of things that didn't make sense about the narrative. Trump probably took the documents because he felt that they were his. He liked having them, and he was working back and forth with them. He said he was cooperating. I'm sure he was a bit prickly at times, but all the narrative surrounding it was just, insane. And of course, there was a raid, which was not perceived well, I think, as far as overall health of the nation. I saw some polling about the raid on Mar-a-Lago from Hispanic Americans, particularly like Cuban Americans, were like, no, we don't like this. This kind of reminds us of different stuff we're trying to escape, and we're seeing it here in America where you're coming after your political opponents. Like, people did not like it. So there was all this hysteria with Trump, and the audacity of going along with it and feeding into it, knowing good and well that Biden had this also documents as well. And so apparently there's a second location. So it's amazing. But if there's a saying, if Democrats didn't have double standards, they'd have no standards at all. So that story will continue to evolve. I saw a TikTok live yesterday. I posted a screenshot of it on my Facebook of someone who said, Ukraine is winning, we need to give them more money. And they also said Biden having records, is it the same as Trump having classified records or something? So I'm sure the way he phrased his stuff was to bait people just to get in there to watch the live and argue with them and comment. But that person was a legit leftist. They're not just like trolling. They legit believe those sorts of things. So we can talk about it in conservative circles, but the left isn't going to care. They don't care about those standards or anything. So yeah, just the audacity kind of blows my mind. But anyway, let's move on. I want to talk about this Laura Loomer Crenshaw thing before I get to the big story with Democrat Plantation commentary. So Dan Crenshaw ended up missing 2 votes. And Laura Loomer wrote, breaking, Rhino GOP rep Dan Crenshaw, Texas, was the only Republican who skipped the vote today on the vote for established subcommittees on the weaponization of the federal government. He also skipped the rules package vote. Looks like Dan is not showing up for work on purpose. So she called him out. And he said, yes, Laura, it was on purpose. I flew to San Diego for a funeral for a friend, an active duty SEAL. Kindly delete your toxic and obsessive trolling if you don't mind. So there are other people who had called him out, like Laura, and were of course dogging him in Laura's comments. So when he wrote that, there were some people who were like, "I don't like you, but I'm sorry for your loss." Um, and I don't know, like a normal person, I think should be able to just see that, acknowledge that they kind of made a mistake and they put their foot in their mouth, you know. Laura did not do that though. Laura doubled down and she said, with all due respect, us a I think as a US congressman, you don't have the luxury of skipping work for sick days, funerals, or days off. You were elected to be the voice of your constituents, and when you miss votes, they don't have a voice. Holding elected officials accountable isn't toxic. Um, I totally um disagree with this. I had retweeted her stuff and was like, "Yo, you really still doubling down?" And someone had retweeted my retweet, and they're like, "No, as an elected official, if you're not there, you're not representing your constituents. We got to hold them to a higher standard." And I'm just like, bro, if we have to hold people to a standard of they're not allowed to go to a friend's funeral, I don't want to do that. I don't think that is a high standard. I don't think it's any sort of standard that normal people should have for each other. We are human. We are human. If you have someone who has passed away, showing your respect is something that is kind and honorable, and people understand that, particularly if you're close and you want to mourn and you want to be there for their family. When my grandmother passed away, my dad said he just appreciated every single face that showed up to the funeral. Like it really did mean so much to him that people came out. So I mean, and that's the case for everybody. You normally, when you have a funeral and people, it's, you can understand when people can't make it, but when they do can go ahead and make it, it it doesn't erase the pain of the loss, but it did. I think it lessens the burden to know how much other people, meant to this person, or just how much respect they're willing to pay to you to be there in your time of bereavement. So I I don't understand the doubling down of it. Not in the least bit. People do take sick days. People do, arrange life for different weddings and other stuff like that. There was a big vote. Was it for? I think it was for Kavanaugh, and there was an elected official. I think it was Republican, and they had, actually I don't remember if it was a Republican, but somebody in the Senate, their daughter was getting married, and they're like, "I'm not missing my daughter getting married." But it was very like down to the wire kind of vote. So I think someone who was a Democrat colleague or something decided to vote present, so their votes wouldn't count against that absence. There's people who are willing to be kind and to each other and work across the aisle to make room for life for these people. I I don't think that this is something that when I suppose I'm accusing her of having a double standard, but would she say the same thing if it was like a MAGA person who had to go to a funeral and there was a vote and they missed an important vote and been like, you should have been there for the, and maybe so, but I don't know. I think that's so inhuman. I think that's so inhuman to do that. And so there was another person, Alex Brucewitz, who also called out Dan and said similar stuff like, "Oh, he missed the vote," and Dan was like, "I was at a funeral, but good, like it's nice to know you trolls missed me," or something. And so he said, like I said earlier, "I'm sorry for your loss, but you shouldn't be upset with me or others who were wondering why you missed important votes. You should be upset with your terrible staff for not releasing a statement about you missing work." Do you really have to? I don't know, have your staff release, hey, they went to a funeral for a friend today, so they're not going to be. They could, but you could also reach out before you make such attacks on that individual, and then you're still not really apologizing. You're saying I'm sorry for your loss, but your staff sucks, and basically they should have put out information to stop me from making myself look into a fool, which they're not admitting they look like fools, but it's not really much of an apology. So it seems like such a silly thing to double down on and make yourself look like a total tool. You went to a funeral. Just It's just uncalled for. It's just so uncalled for. I like, obviously memes and postings. I start off with a meme. We have a good laugh. We have lots of laughs sometimes and other people's expenses on the other side of the aisle a lot on the show. But I don't love how, I don't know, the past couple of years it seems like the douchebaggery has just really exploded. And I think it was always there on the left, but the right has made it like, I don't know, it might as well be in the platform or something. How much people sort of rely on just being I don't know, jerks. This was such a I don't know, disgraceful thing, I think, to do. And people can make mistakes, and you know, to call out somebody in this sort of way. A lot of them don't like his votes, and they see him as a rhino and a warmonger and other stuff like that, and someone who's not an America First patriot. They have their complaints, and I'm not here to, at this moment anyway, to um defend or um Dan for his votes and stuff, or to trash him. I just wanted to say that at the end of the day, people are human, and doubling down on this is just really gross to me. It just is. So I'm gonna leave it at that. Got nothing else to say right now, anyway. Let's move on. So a friend of mine was having a conversation on Twitter, and she raised some good, interesting conversations, and popped up in my feed, and so I wanted to add my 2 cents in. So this person is a ex-leftist, um, and I think they were into the non-binary kind of ideology and stuff too, but left all that stuff, and so I don't know what all of her like sort of political affiliation stuff. I just know that we follow each other. We've had some good conversations, and she followed me on TikTok, and I followed her on on Twitter and stuff, and we've had back and forth. So she makes some good commentary. So she had posted, conservatives should stop comparing Black libertarians / Republicans to runaway slaves. Is not only a poor taste comparison, but it takes away the agency of Black Democrats. No one's being forced against their will to vote Dem, and Black Dems are not less competent than white Dems. So she got, I guess, pushback. I don't know if pushback is the right word, or just a lot of conversations regarding her comparison or talking about that. Because you'll hear people, there were some people flat out denying that they hear commentary of the Democrat Plantation. And I don't know, maybe people miss that, but it's definitely something that people say. It's definitely something I've heard. So she, of course, would supply examples. But I don't know how you can miss it, because I'm pretty sure it was a big thing with Dinesh D'Souza talking about it. Maybe it was in Hillary's America or something, when they kind of broke down the stealing the nation and the plantation and stuff. I've heard Dinesh talk about it, but someone who's definitely talked about it and has made it very popular to say, and I'm not saying either these two people made up that phrase, but Candace Owens has definitely used that phrase. So I don't know how you miss it, especially when you're on Twitter and places like that, and you don't know that people do use the phrase Democrat Plantation. Now, I'm not going to say it's not a phrase that I haven't said before. I I don't know if I've ever really used it in a derogatory way, but it's not something that it is a go-to for me and lots of other Black Republicans who have been in the game for a minute, because it is derogatory, you know? Um, and when you're having a conversation with someone about why the merits of the Republican Party or being a conservative or just leaving the Democrat Party, the best way to go about having that conversation isn't necessarily to start off by insulting that person. So it's not something that that's a go-to that I would normally use in my conversations. But this was the first tweet that I saw of it, actually. For those of you who are defending the Democrat plantation rhetoric because Black people are coerced into voting Dem, do you feel the same way about white men who are told they are racist and sexist or not to vote? I think it's supposed to be for not voting Dem. Are they also slaves, or is it just the Black Dems? Now, again, I said I didn't really use this kind of rhetoric, but I did retweet this tweet and replied and said, I don't, coerce is a very strong word. I wouldn't accuse people of being coerced into it so much, but I do think there's definitely pressure to vote Democrat. I don't know if it raises to the level of you needing to say coerce, but there's definitely pressure. In 2020, I think there was a lot of pressure, social pressure to vote in the 2020 election and to vote a particular way. You just had certain people, get your ballot, turn it, get your ballot, turn it, get your ballot, turn it in. And I'm like, should they listen to the debates first, Michelle Obama? And all these people who were like pushing it so much. But I've talked about this before. One night I was watching Vampire in Brooklyn with Eddie Murphy over my mother's house. We were watching it on Bounce TV. And if you can imagine, Bounce TV is a local Black channel. I don't know how far it reaches, but we were watching a Black sort of iconic film, I guess, and watching it on a Black network. Okay. So when the commercial started, and this is 2020 election, there was a pack that had a commercial playing that was like, people will be able to see if you didn't vote. And if you're not too politically savvy, if you watch that commercial, you might have taken that. And by the way, there were like, people said that they got mailers that said like similar stuff. You might have taken that as people are going to be able to look up and see who I voted for. Or people might be concerned that's a possibility. So they played that commercial, and it was kind of eerie. And I've shared it before, but it was eerie. And then they played it again, like the same thing that I think was a little different. And then they played a Joe Biden commercial, and then they played a Gary Peters commercial. He was running for Senate, his reelection for Senate against John James. And then they played, I think, Joe Biden commercial again, and then they played the PAC ad again. That was like, people are going to be able to see if you voted or not. So there was so much condemnation after 2016 when people found out that you voted for Trump. People were berating white women and white men and Black people who voted for anybody who voted for Trump. You were, I don't know, Hitler-esque, uplifting Hitler, white face of Black supremacy, all this stuff. Someone told my dad he was worse than any white supremacist, which is pretty remarkable to say about a missionary pastor, but those are the things that people were saying. So you might have felt like you wanted to just stay out of it. You don't care too much about it, but people were berating people so much to vote. And then they're saying people are going to be able to see whether or not you did it. So I do think there was a lot of social pressure to vote. So people talk about voter suppression. I think there's a lot more evidence that there's pressure to make people vote, though they might not care that much. And I think people should vote because I think voting is important. But I do also want people to be informed about what they're voting for. and understand the issues, and not be informed by a pop singer or something like I want them to know and understand the issues and legitimately vote for what they think is best. For their themselves, for their communities, for the country, but I want them to be aware of the facts. And if you're someone who got registered to vote on the day of the election and then would decide to vote, I question how informed your vote really was. I don't think just because we have a huge amount of people voting that's a good thing for democracy. I think, which we are not a democracy, but I don't think maybe that's a good thing for democracy when the wolves are voting on to eat the sheep, whatever the phrase is. So so maybe that is good for democracy, but to protect the will of the minority and stuff, I don't I think it's important that everybody's actually informed, not that we just have people you know, pushed off to the polls to go check the lever for whoever. So I think coerce is a strong word, but I do think there's social pressure for sure. Um Now, as far as the rhetoric and her comparing it to like people saying that white men are sexist for and racist or whatever for not voting for them, people will say that regardless of your race. People will say that regardless of your sex. So people will call me will say I have internalized misogyny. People will say that I'm a pick me, and if you don't know what a pick me is, they mean like you're just acting a particular way so a man will pick you or someone will pick you. So that's always I mean, that's a pretty sexist thing to say, that you're just assuming that someone isn't really exercising their actual thoughts and that they're doing it for attention, or people will accuse me of doing stuff for being a grifter or whatever, because they want to do anything to sort of devalue, you know, your sense of agency. They want you to be compromised and expose you as being compromised. When my family first got into politics, which we've been into politics as far as like being informed voters and all that stuff. My dad would used to, before you could just argue with people on Facebook and Twitter, he would go to barbershops to debate people. He would go to barbershops to debate people. And he would, you know, be watching, he'd listen to Rush, he'd watch, you know, the news, he'd read Drudge Report and papers from all over the world. He was just really into being very informed about stuff. So I've been, you know, politically minded since I was, I don't know, 12. So I've been concerned for, you know, at least solidly for half my life. So when we actually decided to get involved with like local politics, we went to a debate watch party, and it was 2012. So it was Obama and Biden. Oh, I'm sorry, Obama and Mitt Romney, which is funny because nobody likes him now. But we went to the local GOP office, and we held up a sign that said, me and two of my sisters held up a sign. By the way, everybody was like holding up signs. We were passing it around the room. So I took the picture with two of my other sisters, and a sign said, Obama's not working. And so the person who took the photo ended up posting it on a Young People for Mitt Romney site, in which I don't think they posted it just because we were Black or anything like that, but there weren't a lot of young people in the room. So I would say it mostly probably is because we were young, and they put it on the Young Romney Republican site or whatever. And I'm sure they posted the other photos in other places, but that photo went kind of viral. And there were people who accused us of being paid to take that photo. And there were people who said some disparaging things, you know, in the comments. And, you know, we thought it was a bit funny. We didn't let it get under our skin. But then, you know, the saga continued with the politics. But the funny thing, though, about the guy who took that photo, he ended up being the digital director of the Michigan Republican Party. And I ended up being the creative director of the Michigan Republican Party. And we shared an office. And I didn't know until like the longest time that he took that photo. Like it didn't register. that we had met each other before. So and I guess we didn't really talk when he took the photo. He was just going around taking the photo. But I'm like, you took that photo? So it was just a weird how everything just kind of circles back together. So people don't like when there's women or black people or whoever to that can possibly make the Republican Party not look like a party of old white men. Which is funny because I've talked to Democrats and they're always a bit concerned that they have a voter base of people who I guess who are involved of like old white men. So I'm like, y'all got that problem? Like, yeah, we do more than people know. So anyway, I don't the issue of like sex and race and stuff that's not something that they would exclusively just really do to white men. But I do think there's a difference as far as like the Democrat plantation narrative, and how Democrats treat black Republicans or anyone who just doesn't vote uniformly with Democrats. Because and it's not just black Democrats that will have a problem. So growing up, you might meet a Democrat and they're like, oh, I'm a Republican, I'm a conservative. And they're like, what? And so they kind of feel like, sissy, like you betrayed us a bit. Like what you stepped out of line kind of with the family. And it feels like an internal family struggle, a family fight or something. That's what it feels like, or that's what they try to make you feel like it's an issue within the family. But when like 2015, I think mostly 2016 happened, I started to notice that there were white people that were really, really, really offended if you like didn't vote Democrat. I'm like, what the audacity? Like, I'm like, who are you to like, you don't own me. It was so weird. The sort of aggression you would get from like white saviors that felt, I don't know, empowered to be able to talk any kind of way to black people. Like they really, so I think that's really where the ownership difference kind of comes in with the plantation. They really feel like you have run away and you're supposed to be here. Like inherently you are supposed to be a Democrat. Like it's not that you decided to be a Democrat. They don't believe in your agency as a black person. They believe that you are just supposed to be here. You were born this way, you got to die this way. And if you decided not to, then you ran away from the plantation. Like that's the thinking behind it. There really is a sense of ownership if you left. When I went to a Trump rally in 20, I think it was 16. So I went with a friend from the Michigan Republican Party. And so she was half Filipino. And I am black. So we were driving there. And so there was a handful of protesters. And so I was like, roll down the window because she was driving. And I just, I was like, minorities for Trump. And all the protesters were white. And so this white old man started pointing, like, shame on you. Shame. And I was just like, you don't own us. And so I got back in the car and we rolled down the windows and she's like, that was so awesome. So I knew it would trigger them in particular. Yeah, but the sort of conversations that I had with people in 2016 and onward were just really wild. And I don't know what particular shift it was, but I don't know. They felt like they had that privilege to talk to you in any kind of way. And it's funny that Democrats will, particularly against Black Democrats, and I've really seen this narrative on MSNBC, that they will accuse Black Republicans of being some kind of prop or, there was some terrible rhetoric that people said about Herschel Walker while he was running. But I don't know, like where plants are paid or whatever, grifters, but just basically essentially being used. But at the same time, I'm like, don't you realize the truth is that you're being used by the party, by the Democrat Party, by these, networks to say this sort of stuff because when you treat Black people badly, it makes white people feel empowered to treat them badly. And I can give you an example. I've already mentioned this many times before on the show, but if you haven't seen the documentary on Clarence Thomas, Justice Clarence Thomas, that's on the Daily Wire, that might be the only place that you can watch it, but it's very good. I think it's called Created Equal. So he talked about how when he was nominated to be a Supreme Court justice, the NAACP was going to stay out of it at first. They agreed to stay out of it. But then he heard they were changing their mind. And the reason that they changed their mind was because the women's groups wanted to come after him because they feared what he would do an abortion. And so they needed some kind of cover to come after him. So they like knew that it, I guess, wouldn't be okay really for them to do that unless the NAACP or these Black groups went after him first. So they went after him, and after they went after him, it was okay for the white women to come after him. That's how they set things up. If the Black Democrats or liberals or leftists or whatever are talking about you, they feel like the white liberals and everyone else can come in and say the same thing. That's how they set it up. It's just the truth. So again, I do think there is a difference with the comparison that she had with the like Black Democrats in the plantation versus like people being called other sorts of names. Now, Democrats feel like they have ownership or claim ownership of just about anyone. So I don't know. Could we get to the point when, they feel so entitled to women that someone's like, "Oh, women, you got to leave the Democrat harem" or something crazy like that? I don't know. I mean, Michelle Obama, after Trump won, she said women didn't listen to their own voice. That was pretty disgusting. But I still don't feel like there's enough vitriol and, like I said, sense of ownership that is the same when it comes to Black people who do normally uniformly vote Democrat, but they normally have a problem. They have a problem with Trump or whoever kind of pecking people off and plucking them off and starting to vote Republican. So anyway, I want to play the words from Candace Owens, who does use this phrase quite a bit. So we're going to go ahead and listen to her justification of Democrat Plantation to know where she's coming from on the matter.
Let's talk a little bit about one of the critiques that's been made of your take on Black America. So you've used language before where you've suggested that people need to get off the ideological plantation, for example. And there's been a critique that basically says, you talk a lot about Black agency. Are you depriving people of agency when you suggest that they've been indoctrinated by the educational system, or when you suggest that they have been sort of told what to think, they've been lied to? Are you suggesting that people aren't freely choosing what it is that they've chosen politically, or do you really believe that it's really not a question of agency, it's a question of misinformation?
Yeah, it's a question of misinformation. And people always get me wrong. They think that I say things to be theatrical when I say the Democratic Plantation. And people go, "Oh, you shouldn't say that. You shouldn't liken it to slavery." No, actually, if you sit down and you study the model of American slavery, and I say Democrat Plantation because at the starting point of the Civil War, all Democrats had slaves. There were no Republicans that held a slave, that owned a slave. And when you look at the model of it, right, what was necessary?
I think, just for clarification, when she said all Democrats had slaves, I don't think she means that all Democrats literally had slaves. I think she just means that slave owners were Democrats.
Illiteracy. Black Americans are not allowed to learn how to read. Look across America today. You can go into inner cities. Here in Los Angeles, you've got Black Americans. 75% of Black boys can't pass a basic literacy exam. Major cities like Baltimore, across 5 schools, they couldn't find a single Black child that was proficient in reading or writing. So we are actually seeing through the education system pollution, the dumbing down of all Americans, right? But especially Black Americans. And when you dumb down Black Americans, that means that they start to look where they're getting their education from culture, right? And that's problematic. Father absence, huge issue. We know you actually were the person that woke me up on that. I watched an old video of yours on Black Lives Matter where you talked about 23% single motherhood rate in the 1960s, 74% at the time that you shot that. I think it's 77% as we're sitting here right now. And what was important to maintaining slavery, making sure the family was broken down. They were constantly trading slaves. If you read Frederick Douglass's book, his autobiography, in the first chapter, he talks about how he felt nothing when his mother died, felt nothing when he was taken away from his sisters, because that was important to maintaining the slave mentality. So in my book, I have a book on slavery, and I really spell out, when I say Democrat plantations, I mean it. It's been updated, it's been modified, but we are very much still living on the plantation, doing the work for Democrats and getting nothing back, right? Voting for them in 93% margins is, to me, that's the form of slavery. We're doing the work for you, and we're getting nothing back. Our communities don't get fixed, our children don't get brighter. So I'm a lot more thoughtful than people give me credit for. It's kind of, it sounds like a flamethrower, I'm just a flamethrower, but I've thought deeply about these topics, and I believe what I say.
So let's talk about some of the cultural influences that you're speaking about. So obviously, there's.
So I think they talk about culture influence a little bit after that, and then you could go watch the whole Sunday special just to see more, but I at least wanted to play that bit. So as far as Candace Owens, is she a flamethrower? Yeah. I think that is part of her brand, to say things that are shocking, but I do think she says things that are shocking for a purpose. I think there's some merit in what she's saying. Yeah. But again, I said that I don't normally use that sort of language when I'm having a conversation with people, because I don't think if I want to convert someone to being a Republican and to stop being a Democrat, that the way to go precisely is to start off by insulting them, by implying that they're some kind of mental slave. Though I do think that is true in a lot of cases. So that people are indoctrinated, and they feel like they cannot leave their particular ideology, or it's like they don't realize, it's like they think that they're going to walk off the edge of a cliff, not knowing that it's just a road to a better place. So but they've been told otherwise for so long. So an example, I guess, would be after Roe v. Wade ended, you had all these people who had this visceral sort of reaction to it. People like gnashing at their teeth, crying, screaming, saying women don't have rights anymore. Women don't have bodily autonomy anymore. Women aren't equal to men anymore. And I'm like, you really think that in order to succeed in life or to be equal to men, that you need to have the access to abortion? Because I mean, that kind of language is, you're saying that women aren't inherently equal to men, because pregnancy is something that is inherent to just being female. Now, of course, you can have different issues and be infertile and stuff like that. But that's something that's like just part of our normal physiology, if all things working well, etc. So to think that how we come into life, if we don't have this capability to not have children, which we do have that capability, there's ways to not get pregnant. If I mention that, people will get triggered. But to think it's we're not equal unless we have something like abortion. I'm like, what happened to our generations to fill our women with such weakness? Like, seriously. That people are so grieved. And I understand people being grieved because they've been convinced that we've had this right for so long. But I'm like, this is disturbing, the sort of mentality that people have. And you have people who are affluent and really rich who are saying stuff like that. Like Jennifer, Hunger Games chick, what's her last name? She said something along those lines in her interview that she had, I think, with Vanity Fair, and we talked about it at the time when it was relevant. But so many of these young women are just trapped in this mindset, and I'm like, don't you know that like 94% or maybe it's 96% of women, according to the Turnaway study that people quote all the time, don't regret not getting an abortion when they're turned away from an abortion. Like Like, it'll be okay. It'll really be okay. And normally when there's some kind of restrictions, people are just more careful about their sexual sort of activities. And you could like see there's all these stories about men looking up getting vasectomies, or men actually getting vasectomies, or women saying, well, we're not going to sleep with men anymore. I'm like, oh, but if I say abstinence, y'all trip. Like, but when you decide that you have to punish men without having that, without getting sex, then it's like you're just empowered. I'm like, okay, whatever works. So there are people who get really, really trapped in different mentalities. So there's a lot of truth to what I think Candace Owens was saying. For example, and I mentioned this quite a bit, the minimum wage is something that Democrats really, really, really push and really, really fight for. It was a fight for 15, and now they're like $20 an hour, $25 an hour. They'll never stop, I suppose. Which, by the way, fast food places are like, you can work for $15, I've seen $18 fast food places. And people didn't want to work for that during like the pandemic. And even now it's like people are short staffed, but people are now automating a lot more stuff. So I think we're going to see a crisis for a lot of workers in the future, but we'll see what happens. But anyway, they push minimum wage. They're very passionate about it. So, but the origin of minimum wage is rooted into eugenics, and eugenics isn't like strictly a racial thing, but you had these elites who felt like they were too good to work for competitive wages with people who they deemed as unhirables, or people who shouldn't have been hireable. And so they wanted the minimum wage to outprice these folks. Because if it's if wages have to be a certain amount, you'd feel more inclined to, I don't know, hire this white gentleman maybe over this Negro over here if you have to pay him this price. Because otherwise the Negro could have been like, I'll work for like a couple cents cheaper, and then that person who won't work for it, they just won't work for it, but at least I have money to feed my family. So they knew that it would unemploy certain kind of people, and they thought that was a good thing. They didn't think that these people should be employed. And Royal Meeker, he worked for the Woodrow Wilson administration. And so he was a eugenicist. And so he believed, and he was an economist, and he believed that it would, actually, I'm pretty sure he was an economist, but he was a eugenicist, and he worked for the Woodrow Wilson administration. And so he believed that minimum wage would make particular people unemployed, and then that would put them on welfare. But he thought that was a good thing, because if they were on welfare, then you could control these families to a degree, instead of them just being out there able to survive on their own, and the families be able to kind of create their own destiny. Being up under the teat of the government, needing their welfare to survive, would give the government some kind of control over them. So there is truth to what she's saying as far as like breakdowns of the family and just control that people want over the family. The family is like the key to civilization, whether you destroy it or you control it or whatever. So there's truth to what Candace is saying. Now, I think and I wrote an article about her some time ago when she joined the Daily Wire, that people have different methods and different messages, and you may not always agree with them, and you may not always come at the same way that they would. My message, or how I deliver my message, is not the same as Candace Owens. But that doesn't mean that Candace Owens isn't necessary, or people like Candace isn't necessary, and that I'm, not necessary. So I think we're all necessary. And there's different people that can reach different people. My uncle, who's a staunch Democrat, very stubborn, likes to argue. I don't like to argue with my uncle because he can take you there to different places. And I'm respectful. And I'm just like, I don't want to get into a big match with my mom's brother. So there have been times where I've like peacefully like tried to just kind of draw back, and people have been like, she could destroy you, man. But you know, but he likes to push. He likes to push. My mom said that he probably likes to argue with me because he argued a lot with my Uncle Raymond, who passed away, and he was I guess Republican. So I don't know, maybe, but I don't want to go there, so I try not to let him take me there. But he told my oldest sister that he liked Candace Owens. So I was just after he said that, I was like, well, she must be doing something right. Again, I would not say all the things that Candace says. I would not, we don't have the same sort of way about us. Though we may say similar things, our delivery and we're just not the same. People try to, at times, have tried to insult me by calling me little Candace Owens, which I don't know why I would be little Candace Owens. She's so small and I'm so big. So I don't know why I would be. I mean, I know they're just basing it off a reach or something, but I'm just like, I'm clearly the big one. So it just seems a little weird to me. So people have made that comparison, but we're still not the same. Even people who share similar values are still not the same. So the way that she does things and her approach to stuff, I do think she's a flamethrower. She said people just think I'm a flamethrower, or she's not a flamethrower. I think she knows that she's a bit of a flamethrower, and she says things to kind of shock, but then she has a method to it. She said people don't think she's as thoughtful as she is. I think that's true, that people underestimate her, and she did have at least a reasoning to why she said what she said. Again, I wouldn't take that approach to people normally. But some people like say it as a retort, like back to someone. If they're like, you're an Uncle Tom, or it's like, you're on the plantation. You know, some people have called me like a Steven from Django. I'm just like, bro, like those are Democrats, like Candyland. Like I'm the Django. Like, what are you talking about? You're clearly the Steven. I'm clearly the Django. So people may use it as, you know, kind of like a defense, or to move into offense position to fight back against someone who's come at them. But just normally I probably would stray away from the plantation stuff in general, but I see where people are coming from when they use it. I don't think it's so much about agency. I think a lot of it has to do with process, and how people feel, how they own the individual. But I do believe that some people would take offense to it, especially people who are on the more educated end of the spectrum of the Democrat voter, who is Black, and they just, I don't think, would respond well to you saying something like that. So people have to use different methods to reach different people and have conversations. Not everyone's going to listen to Candace Owens. Not everyone's going to listen to me. But I will say that observing in ministry, there's some people that you just have to have discernment about how you deal with folks, because there's some people who really, really need you to come at them hard, because they are a hard-headed individual and they just wouldn't listen unless you come at them hard. And then there's some people who you need to have a very gentle approach to, and there's people who are very, very analytical that you need to break it down. There's some people who are just kind of blinded. There's people you have to deal with them in all sorts of ways. There's people who have to learn the hard way. Folks are just vastly different. So it's not the correct method for everyone, but I'm not going to necessarily say it's the wrong method, because saying something that's shocking and then someone breaking down all the reasons why, and maybe they would go and look deeper into the separation of families and the destruction of the family, and listen to something I said about the minimum wage and stuff, and be like, oh my gosh, that is actually true. And maybe start reassessing some things. So I guess I'm not going to tell you one way or another not to use it, but I would just say, you know, there are definitely cons to using it. But I don't think it's mostly about agency. Yeah, and I think that's all I got to say about that topic for now. Lastly, I want to mention Blue's Clues. So some time ago, and I'm not gonna play the video, but there was a episode. There were 2 episodes of Blue's Clues, or I think they were special um things that maybe, I don't know if they actually put it in the episodes or if they just did like special videos that they put on YouTube or put on like different commercials. Like sometimes you're watching TV and they'll have like long commercials or whatever promotional videos for the cartoon that's not actually within the cartoon itself. So Blue's Clues had one episode where they actually did like a numbers counting pride parade thing, and Nina West led it, and Nina West is a drag queen, adult entertainer who said some pretty grotesque stuff at family friendly drag shows. I don't understand why anyone, I, I guess I shouldn't say that, but it's just grotesque if you want these adult entertainers to mix with these children at all. It should not be normalized at all. It's heinous. If you want someone in colorful colors teaching kids, drawing a clown, invite a clown to read at school, you don't need drag queens. You don't. So in my pretty viral video, I talked about that episode with the drag queen leading the pride parade, but people took a big issue with the flags episode or snippet when they were doing like an alphabet book, and they got to P for pride. So I saw different sort of flags in there. There's a couple different flags. So I decided to use the one, I'm going to bring up a picture of it really quickly so you guys can at least see on here what I'm talking about. Okay. So that's it. That was in the P for pride in their alphabet thing. Now they didn't need to use P for pride, but there's different flags there. So I picked the pansexual flag to talk about because I thought that would be the least controversial thing to mention. There is the no, I'm not happy about this page at all. I'm not happy that they did P for pride. I'm not happy that they have the transgender thing. I don't like that at all. But I picked the pansexual flag because I thought that was the least controversial one at the time to talk about in the minute video that I got out, right? And people did not like my classification of the pansexual flag, and I described it as something like, do you really want to let kids know that you have some sexual limitations? And so people were like, you don't even know what it means. So first of all, pansexual, they'll say that it just means that you can love people beyond their bodies. That's what they'll say. That's how they will summarize it, like it's some kind of cutesy thing. There's only 2 genders. There's only 2 sexes. It's male and female. So if you like all the options available, it just means you're bisexual with a lot of emotions going on. That's what it means. You're not pansexual. Unless you like to have relations with animals and inanimate objects and perhaps even pans themselves, you are not a pansexual. That is something that you say. It's meaningless. You are bi. That is the truth. There are only 2 genders. There are only 2 sexes. Sex is binary, period. It doesn't matter how you feel. It doesn't matter how you feel. You're bisexual. But anyway, let's just go with you believing that you're pansexual, and let's just give you that. Defining it as you love people beyond their bodies. Doesn't everyone do that? Doesn't everyone love different people beyond their bodies? Like, don't I love other fat people? Don't I love thin people? Don't I love black people, brown people, yellow people, whatever? Don't I love people beyond their skin color and all that stuff? even people who are, who I disagree with politically, I can love them as well. But that doesn't mean I romantically love them. That doesn't mean that I have sexual attraction toward them. So just simply saying that you love people beyond their bodies, as if the flag has nothing to do with someone's sexuality, their attraction or whatever, is ridiculous. Because it wouldn't need to be a pansexual flag. It could be a friendship is magic flag, but it's not. It's not. It's a pansexual flag. So I feel it's inappropriate, and most people feel it's inappropriate to be in a children's show for preschoolers. Preschoolers, the demographic would be 3 to 5. Now, I saw someone who's like, I watched Blue's Clues till I was 15. I wouldn't brag about that, bro. I wouldn't brag about that. But if you watch it till you're 15, okay, you were not the target demographic that they're making Blue's Clues and dumbing it down. Like, could you not find the clues? Is that why you watch? For whatever reason that you watched it, you watched it. It's not a brag I would do, but it's not for you. It's for kids, and little tiny kids will sit in front of the TV and watch Blue's Clues. Now, you could say, well, they don't know what those flags mean. Yeah, that's true. But if they ask what they mean, they want people to explain. But why put it in there if it's not for the kids? Because you want to affirm your feelings and your worldview and make yourselves feel better. It's for the adults are doing this, whether it's at the expense of the children or not. So I think that's really weird. Go find your affirmation elsewhere. Stay out of children's cartoons. But I did the video mostly to warn people about the kind of stuff that's on the kids' cartoons. And that's why I talk about a lot of things. So to warn people, because a lot of people don't know. They don't follow the stuff as closely as I do. So a lot of people thank me for letting them know. Like, there was a big Baymax thing when they had the trans, man buying the pads, and she had the trans shirt on to let you know that she was buying the pads, and she said, like, I always use these, and they wanted you to know clearly. And so people had an issue, and they're like, well, if you don't like it, just don't watch it. I'm like, I'm not gonna watch it. I haven't watched anything. I haven't watched a Disney movie. I haven't watched Star Wars. I haven't watched Marvel films since the last thing that I watched was WandaVision. So I think Disney is a deeply immoral company, and Nickelodeon is Nickelodeon, but I'm just going on to Disney now. So Eric July said, don't give more than 50% of your money to people who hate you. And I'm like, that's a good model. So I'm at least not going to indulge Disney Plus. So, and by the way, me and my family, we would go to Marvel movies on opening night. We'd bring the church with us. Actually, the cover photo of our church for a while was us at the movies, and someone was like, we should probably change that. And then we change it to something, church related. But we're big movie folks. I've got thousands and thousands of comic books. We'd spend so much time in the comic book shop on Wednesdays. Went to conventions, very much part of my life, and I quit it because I don't like where it's going and the kind of stuff that they put out. So I still look up this information, and I let people know so other people can make the decisions for themselves, and most people are thankful. So that's the explanation of the flags. You can feel differently. You can be upset that I said you're just bisexual with a lot of emotions and feelings. Whatever. You can, congratulations. I just gave you some more feelings to feel about. So go live with that. So anyway, thank you guys for watching. I hope you guys enjoyed the show. Hope it was informational. But go to blacktnews.com, check out different content on my website, different articles that I have, different products that I have, like the You Are Not That Special for my haters today. You can go get one of those. Also got them in cute little mugs. You guys can check that stuff out. Also like the My Money, My Business and all kinds of other stuff you guys can get at the website. So check out the merch that we have on there. Also, if you like what I do at blacktnews.com, please consider leaving a donation at blacktnews.com/donate. I very much appreciate if you're able to do that, whether it's a gift of $10, $20, $50 or more. very much appreciated. Cost to stream, cost to run my website, do all that good stuff. So if you can, God bless you. Otherwise, thank you guys for liking, for sharing, for subscribing, hitting the notification bells. All that really does help. Make sure that you guys are watching stuff on YouTube too, so I can get some of those watch hours up. So, and thank you to everyone who's subscribed and follows on Facebook, but subscribed on YouTube. I had a large jump in subscribers, so we're getting there. And so I just thank you guys for tuning in. God bless you, and I'll see you tomorrow.